everyone, and welcome to yet another afternoon session with Lucie and Xavier, talking about advanced dashboarding solutions with Matomo, an approach using Google BigQuery and Looker Studio for business intelligence. So this is going to be quite interesting. So go ahead. We're looking forward to what you have to say.
Thank you so much for introducing us. So I'm going to be joined today with Lucie Lafarge, who's a tracking and analytics consultant at Nest, where I'm also analytics engineer. So this session is about how you can extract and go outside of the Matomo UI and use the data for different purposes. This is the use case of one of our customers called Nexence, who allowed us to use their Matomo for the presentation. And so this approach is quite, I'm not going to say naive, but like we tried to extract the data and see what we can do with it. So maybe there is improvement that can be done, but it's also to show that anyone can try an experiment and get interesting results to use the Matomo data anywhere we'd like.
So to start with a bit of context about why we wanted to get out of Matomo in order to provide a bit of further information for our clients, is that when we implemented and gave Matomo to our client, they were a bit confused about where to get the data and how to find the KPI. There is a lot of information inside the Matomo interface, but it can be quite confusing. So also, if you get a customized implementation for our clients, have many websites all around the world. So we have different properties for about 100 websites or so. So we have 4 properties, we have custom dimensions, custom events, and so on. So it's complicated. You have to get many different custom reports in all the properties. So it makes it a bit complicated to really deep dive and get a monitoring and a consistency, like to get easily the information to reports. So we wanted to give them a simple Looker dashboard that they had before when they were using Universal Analytics. So we really need to get further and to go into Looker, because our clients are not data analysts at all. They don't have the skill in their team to go and spend hours deep diving into the data. So we really wanted to make something really simple that they can open and directly get the information that they want. So we're gonna show you a bit today, like how we have done this.
So we use the GCP, so the Google Cloud Platform ecosystem, because the customer was using Google Analytics before and already had some reporting in Looker Studio in there, so it made sense to stay here. Moreover, we're not going to go too deep into it, but you can have use case where you want to compare the Google Analytics data with the Matomo data. And so because it's Google, it's very easy to retrieve the Google Analytics or the Google Search Console data over there. So it made sense. We're going to use mainly a couple of components of the Google Cloud Platform, which is so the Cloud Function to extract the data, BigQuery to process it and consolidate it, and then there's going to be Looker Studio for the visualization. So as an overview, the data will go through different stages. The custom reports are set up in the Matomo UI, and from there you can get the information you need to extract it. You will then use the cloud function to extract it, and then processing, modeling, a bit of orchestration so we can do this automatically, and finally we will visualize it, see it in Looker.
Thank you. So I will start with the first part about the data preparation in Matomo. So as I said before, like if you want to get information about custom dimensions and be able to cross information, you will need to create custom reports. Whether you are in Matomo Cloud or on-premise, this is a good practice. So you can just like create any amount of custom reports. The thing to know is that when you create custom reports in Matomo Cloud, you get a limitation of 3 dimensions. So you really have to think about the type of data you need and make sure that it's really something that is going to be useful, because it might be a bit complicated. You have to be selective. And you can also play with the filter and the conditions so that you can then aggregate different type of reports. So you can go in very deep in the granularity of your custom reports and then re-aggregate it further during the modelization process. However, if you're on-premise, you don't have this limitation. You can just update the configuration file of Matomo and then increase the number of dimensions you can add in a custom report. So once you have done your report, you can do the get an export link. This is also available for any native reports. Just click on the export button, and you will be able to select several parameters and then get your complete URL. So I just want to first focus on this API call URL that you get, so you can understand really how it works and how the API is retrieving data. The first part is very basic. It's about the host name of your property. You just get it in your URL. Then you can it's an API call, so it's inside the module. You can select the type of the format of data. So any kind, you can also actually use a CSV and then export in a Google Sheet and so on. In this case, we will use JSON file. You have your site ID, you can select, and you can get it from your Matomo interface. You have to select a period, day, week, month, your dates, and date range, and this is the most important one, the method. So the method is the type of information you can retrieve. Everything is detailed in the documentation on Matomo. It's actually quite well detailed. So here in this case, to get the custom report information, Xavier used the custom reports.get custom reports. You can also create custom reports with the API directly. So it's quite nice to play with this method. Next one, very important as well, is the ID custom reports. The names of your custom reports actually don't really matter too much. It's the IDs that you will need to retrieve afterwards. And the unique ID of your custom report. In the case of these methods, we got custom report IDs to add, but depending on the method you use to get data from your API, you will have different custom parameters to add, but everything again is detailed in the documentation on the websites. One also very important parameter is whether you want your data flat or expanded. So we chose to get it flat. You can see here, so when you will call the API, it will give data concatenated in one column. So afterwards, we will have our 3 dimensions separated with a dash. And then the information. If you choose expanded dimension, expanded way of exporting data, the information will be nested. The dimensions are nested one in another, just like it's displayed in Matomo. In the interface, you can choose flat or expanded. It's a bit of the same principle. So here it's more easier for us, so we choose flat. Then you just get your token, The token is available for super users in the security section in Matomo, and then you get the filter. Here we put no limit, -1, which is limitless when you're on-premise and with a bit of limit when you are on the Matomo Cloud. And as you can get some lower values, like when there's like too many rows, they're aggregated in an other parameters, an other label, I mean. So, but you always put -1 if you want to have as much data as possible. And now we're just gonna switch to the extract part. So how to get the data outside of Matomo and inside GCP.
Yeah, thank you. So indeed, before we can use the data, we need to extract it, and we will put it in BigQuery, which is the data warehouse, where we can also store other kinds of data. But first, yeah, we need to extract it. To do so, we're going to use Google Cloud Functions. They're similar to the Lambda or the Azure Functions with the other cloud providers, which allow you to run code in a serverless manner, so you don't have to worry too much about handling computer provisioning and resources allocation and so on. So you can just run for almost no cost at all, small bits of code. And so they are very fitting in that use case for lightweight ETL or triggering events after, or like processing after events and so on. You can use any of the listed languages for, at least for Google Cloud Functions. We chose to go with Python because it can handle data frame and in a quite convenient manner. But yeah, if you'd like to use other languages, it's possible as well. So it's a bit it can be scary at first, but we'll go through it. The goal is not to read each line of code, but to add a bit more context about it. And then you can use the presentation if you need to later, if you need to dig a little deeper. So this is what the Cloud Function environment will look like once it's deployed. And there's like three main parts: the configuration that you will do once, the requirements, which are like the modules in Python that you will need to import so you can have all the features you need. And then you have the code itself. For the initialization, like in Python, first you do some imports, and then you do a little bit of configuration, defining some environment variable and so on. In GCP, the main folder is called a project, and so that's why we need to define the ID. Also, the token that Lucie mentioned earlier, you will want to store it securely. So here we stored it in through the secret manager, and we're using an environment variable to retrieve the token without spreading it or having it in the code. On the right side, we have a bit of date handling. So we set it up so by default, if we run the function without specifying anything, it will retrieve the data for yesterday. But we may also specify a start date and an end date, so it will retrieve the data for the whole range we want. So that's what is being done in the initialization part. Then we're going to call the Matomo API. So in the main function, we have the we are calling the extract function, which is this one. If I can scroll, oops, sorry. So this is actually the URL that Lucie showed you earlier. It's just we formatted the parameter in a more easy to handle way, but then it will be formatted as the URL was shown earlier. So you can see that we are retrieving the token, we're specifying the ID of the custom report, the format, and so on. But basically, it will run the URL and store the response in a file. So then we will process the response. Why? For a couple of reasons. So the response in JSON is looking like this. It's not really meant for us to understand, but there is a couple of things we will want to do, which is clean the column names or the fields. For instance, if BigQuery, the character are not allowed, so we're just going to do some cleanup in the field names. And also, we're going to add the timestamp of the processing when the function was run. Why? Because you can imagine that if we run the function many times on the same date range, we're going to get duplicates, which can be intended if for some reason there's like a backfill that's needed, or data that we need in the past that we need updating. And so in the row table, we're not going to do the duplication. We're just going to store everything and add the timestamp of when it was added. So later on, we can retrieve the freshest data for each unique key. And then the last part of the Cloud Function code is to write it in BigQuery. So we specify the project, the dataset, the table, and it will create those if they don't exist. You don't have to create the table in BigQuery first. You can just put a name and it will append the data if it exists, or it will create if needed. Then if everything works according to plan and we test it, we should see in the testing output that the data has been saved successfully. So by now, we should be pretty happy. However, so it is testing, but you might not want to run it by yourself every time. So we're going to use a neat little tool that's in GCP, which is the scheduler. And so with the scheduler, you can specify a cron frequency, set the URL of the Cloud Function, and because by default we said that if there is no date inputted in the field, it will use the data of the previous day. It will retrieve the data from the previous day. So that's what we do. Like every day we call the function without specifying anything. It will add the data of the previous day. So now we should have some data in BigQuery, but we will do what's needed to go from a raw state to something that's easy to handle by a BI tool, in this case, Looker Studio. So when you save the data through the Cloud Function, it will be inserted in a BigQuery table that looks like this. So you can see the label. So that's our 3 dimensions are concatenated because it was selected as a flat and not extended. So that's why we'll need to do some processing over here. You can also see that we have the process date time on the right. So maybe for the same date and the same label, because the function has been run multiple times, they can be duplicate, but at least we can always know which is the most recent one. But yeah, so that's the raw table, but we will need to enhance it. And you can do a lot more. We're going to be doing quite like a few simple things, but that's where you can add other sources of data and do aggregation, consolidation, and enhance this part as you wish. And that's why it's very nice to be able to use the data in a data warehouse, because you can do whatever you want. Maybe you've seen the session this morning from Nicolas and Louis, where one of our use cases was to consolidate with the Google Analytics data. So because Matomo can be exempted from consent, and Google Analytics on this customer was not. And so we were able to see the discrepancy between the two sources and also get event information from the CMP, and see the consent acceptation from different sources, campaigns, devices. So that's why it's really neat to be able to get the Matomo data and combine it with some other things. Again, we're going to do it, keep it pretty simple here. So all the transformation are in SQL, which is quite easy to handle. And as I said earlier, we're going to do just a couple of things, retrieving splitting the label, so we can separate the content name and the URL. And then we're going to do the deduplication. So through the unique key, which can be composed of the date and the label, we always retrieve the more recent one. So as I said earlier, if we run the function multiple times on the same date, we won't get duplicated data. So that's the first part, to have each table a bit more clean. The second part is, as Lucie said earlier, you can have multiple websites that you want to consolidate. You want maybe to go further than just 3 dimensions. And so if you have a matching key and they're in a similar scope, you can just combine them here. So here through the date and URL, then we can retrieve the content path and have way more dimensions. Not way more, but a couple more dimensions, and get really good insights from them. So it's a simple join. And that allows us to get a consolidated table with all the dimensions we wanted, the KPI, and so on. So that's what this simple aggregation has allowed us to do. Finally, we can just use scheduled queries on a defined frequency. So the aggregated table is refreshed automatically, so we don't have to do that manually. The query itself will define what table is going to be replaced, so there's no need to specify a location. So it can be, again, like just simple SQL code that's run on a schedule. And finally, so we have our data that's ready to be used. And so I'm going to leave Lucie back to the last part.
So when the data is already available in the source as a partitioned table in BigQuery, if you just go in Looker Studio, you will be able to add new data sets. If you just link to your BigQuery and just select your project, you can easily find it and just import it here. And here you will be able to see all your the sources you get. In this specific case, we had maybe around 50 custom reports to aggregate and put together. And it's turned out to be about 5 data sources. It needs to be several data sources because it's focused for a purpose. For example, we have the acquisition and the device information or some events information, all the custom reports based on the event action category name and or in one aggregated in one source. And here, for example, what's interesting is that we had the limitation of 3 dimensions, but because we played with the category to filter and create different custom reports based on the action, the event name, and the site, we managed at the end to get 4 dimensions. And it can be the same for other reports. So it's still a bit like 5 sources, but it's a lot less than what we had before. And it helps us to have more intuitive dashboard for our clients to monitor its activity. So this is over for this presentation, and if you have any questions, let us know. And also note that this presentation will be available afterwards, but we also have an article dedicated to this topic with some code, the code that has been presented today, that will be available there. So feel free to go check it out. And if you have any questions today or afterwards, you can still get in touch with us. Thank you very much. I don't know, Victor, if you had any questions in the chat.
Great, thank you both for the talk. This was very insightful and a great showcase for a kind of a data pipeline, data lake, data warehouse structure that you did there with Google Components. We have a few questions here. Perhaps we start with the most general one. Because also you seem to have woken up the interest in the people. Someone wants to know how to get started, which components are at play here. What does he or she need to get rolling?
Yeah. So basically, you can just use try out like on Google Cloud Platform. You can subscribe, so it's with Google account. Like if you have a Google Workspace account, it's quite easy to get started. They have free trial offers. So the only maybe blocking part is quite quickly they will ask you if you can add a credit card. However, for the cost side of things, they have a lot of free tiers, and this kind of project are well capable to stay within that free tier. So at most, it's gonna be a couple of euros per month. For most of the customer we are using that on, it's basically free. So there's no big need to be scared of adding a credit card. It's just one of the first step. But once you have access to a GCP project, there's going to be a couple of components. The Google Cloud function that you can create. So as Lucie said earlier, you can use so the code is available on the website. So you can just copy paste the code, replace the so we specified where to replace with your URL, your token, and so on. So you can just implement that part for the code. If you add a dataset table and everything, when you run it, it will automatically create the table in BigQuery, so you don't have to do any setup over there. It just will be created. So you will need to navigate from the Cloud Function to the BigQuery part of the GCP, and you will see your table. And finally, you can go in Looker Studio, and when when you first open a new dashboard in Looker Studio, which is also free, they will ask you to add a data source. You have like direct connectors to Google Ads or Google Analytics or BigQuery or other tools. And if you select BigQuery, you will see the table you created, and you can plug it directly. So then you will get the raw data. So maybe that's what you want, but you can also do the small steps of data prep, data cleaning, get a clean table, and then plug the dashboard on there.
Great. Yep. Thank you. Perhaps also there's a question. It seems like someone already has visited the link that you posted in the last slide and asks if these articles also will be in some point in time available in English, not only in French.
We can make it. Since we made this conference in English, I assume that we have some users, so we can translate it afterwards and do a little updates by the end of the week. So just come back in a few days, and it will be in English then.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you very much. That's great news. Also, we have some other questions concerning the data connectivity. So it seems like for this slide or this presentation, at least, you exclusively use the API connected to custom reports that you set up before that. Do you have also cases where you connect directly to the database? And what do you see as pros and cons of the one or the other solution?
So we have a couple of customers that are like using Matomo on premise, and so they can extract the raw data, the whole data, like in BigQuery. So the pros is that like you have a very granular approach. The cons is that like it can be quite a mouthful to handle at first. You have the log visit table, the log visit action table that are quite raw, and so to make sense of it, you have to do a fair amount of processing, know like what custom dimension means what on what website. Because like you can have multiple websites on the same export, but the custom dimension on one website may not be the same on another website. So you have to know what is what and transform the names into something that are more understandable. And so it's heavier in processing, but you can more easily go deeper. Whereas, as you saw in this situation with Matomo Cloud and the limitations, the limit of like 3 dimensions, for instance, you have to do like some multiple ones and make sure that they are aggregatable afterwards. So yeah, one is simpler but a bit more limited, and the other one is way more in depth but needs more work.
Excuse me, I must leave right now because there is a fire alarm in my building. So I'm just gonna leave, but if you have any questions that cannot be answered by Xavier or whatever, just feel free to send an email, contact me on any case, and I would be happy to answer. I'm really sorry I have to leave early, but
no worries.
That's important, so I'm not sure it's the next slide that we're gonna. Thank you so
I hope
much.
there is no real fire. Thank you, Lucie. Goodbye. Oh, that's a new one. Okay, all right. Perhaps so. We at least hope there is no fire, and that's just an error in the system. But perhaps Xavier, you have time for another 2 or 3 questions that.
Yeah, of course. I'm not in the same building, so I'm not at risk at the moment.
Okay, perfect. So for the consent status, so what you showed us just seems to use very heavily aggregated data. So that's probably not a big problem. Also using that and processing that without any consent. But are you also using more specific user data? So anonymized data on user level, something like that. On one slide, I think you showed connections to Facebook ads or HubSpot or other systems. How do you deal exactly with personal data and consent? Do you perhaps also store the consent to every session also in the Google engine and only process visitors where you know you have the consent for that? Or how do you deal with that in general?
So I gave examples of different projects. This one specifically, so the Nexence use case, yeah, there's not really any consolidation with other sources. So in that situation, it hasn't been really a topic. There's another customer where we only get the data when the consent is given, and this is one of the use case where we add some Google Ads data, because in Matomo we retrieve the campaign ID of which the user is from, and so, but it's only for users that have consented, like in this use case. And the third one, where it was the dashboard that compared the acceptation rate. So there was no personal user data, just Matomo exempted from consent with events about the cookie banner, compared to the traffic on Google Analytics. So over there was no personal data. So yeah, the only use case where we're consolidated with Google Ads, it's the one where Matomo is implemented, or we get only the data from persons that have consented. I don't know if it completely answered the question, but we haven't had to deal at the moment with the personal data, and also check if they have given consent or not.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. Also, as I think currently the last question. So you're referring in your slide deck and the presentation to the Google Cloud Engine services. So serverless functions, all the components like logging, BigQuery, and everything. So provider like for that, do you have experience with those other stacks, or why did you choose the Google Cloud Engine over those?
So actually, we are in the process of with one of the customers to do that, exactly that, but on the Microsoft environment, because their stack is already that. So it is possible to replicate the information. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, no fire. Good.
Oh, great news.
So Peter was asking if we had any experience with doing the same project on other cloud providers, and then so yeah, actually we're about to do the same, but on Microsoft, using the Power BI and Synaptics and so on. So it can be done. And the second part of the question was why we chose it. So in this context so NS is quite used to BigQuery, because there's the Google Ads data, the Google Analytics data, the Google Search Console data that we use a lot on many of our customers. So it makes sense to be there, and so that's where we had the most experience. And because the customer was already on Looker Studio in this context, it made sense to say on Google, but it can be done on other providers.
Yes, if I may add, we had also a question about continuing the service. They needed a dashboard to monitor data, and they were migrating from Universal Analytics to Matomo. so they couldn't afford to wait a few months that the migration on Azure is done, and it's a large group, so there can be some process and sometimes it can be slow. So this was a bit the quick move to go through BigQuery and then eventually migrate to their internal environments. We just didn't have the time. But if you get the time to do things properly, it's great to start directly in the environment. A good one.
Great, thank you. And also perhaps as a last question, do you have, if you approach a new customer or you start a new project with a customer, do you have some kind of tracking template also for Looker Studio, for example, or Power BI? Do you have something to get the kick started, or do you first start to do requirements management meeting or KPI workshop with the customer, and then go from there and build everything from scratch?
It really depends actually on the client, on the maturity and the way they are. Like in this case, the client already had a tracking implemented. We had already everything in place because it was in universal analytics. We did a bit of change to get the things we wanted with Matomo. So we updated a bit the GTM tracking. And I think that's no matter the case you are in, maybe think about what is needed afterwards. If you don't have anything, or if you already have a tracking, it's a good question to ask, like really what the dashboard needs to look like at the end to make sure they collects the appropriate data. And especially if you're on Matomo Cloud, you have to think about the limitation and have this in mind. If the client wants to have many custom dimensions and to be able to cross them, you need to think about it and make sure like everything that you do is useful, because it's a bit of work. So the dashboard at the end really needs to be used. And I think it's good to think this way, no matter if you do a migration to Matomo or if you just do start a new project directly in Matomo. I think that the good start point is always to create the end dashboard and think about what you need, then the data source, then create your dashboards. So you go from a high level to lower level and then go back to higher level by building it step by step as we show.
And I can recommend that it's very complex to really recommend the customer that simplicity is king, and that not too much stuff is not useful always. So if you have a lot of possibility and options and flexibility, then sometimes the customer's fantasy is going through with them.
Yeah.
Great. So Lucie and Xavier, thank you very much for your talk. It was very insightful, and thank you also for providing all that information besides of the presentation. This has been a pleasure to listen to you. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, and great afternoon.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.